Welcome. I am just so incredibly glad you are joining us today.
Absolutely. It's great to be here.
Seriously, get comfortable. But maybe not too comfortable, because we have a really fascinating mission for today's deep dive.
Yes, we do.
We are actually charged with giving life to this specific script today, using our deep dive format to create an audio experience based entirely on some pretty intense text we were provided.
Intense is definitely the right word for it.
Right. We are taking a concept that you have probably heard a million times, something that often just gets watered down into vague, cliche advice, and we are going to completely rewire how you think about it. We are talking about mental fortitude,
But we are entirely ditching the usual motivational fluff.
totally ditching it. Instead, we're looking at a rigorous, actionable, almost technical protocol for mental fortitude.
That's really the perfect way to frame it. To accomplish this, we are pulling from a highly compelling source text today called The Architect of Fortitude, a structural audit of excellence.
It's quite a title.
It is, and I want to set the tone for you right up front. If you are looking for a gentle pat on the back or someone to validate your comfort zone, you have absolutely accessed the wrong terminal today.
Yeah, fair warning to everyone listening.
This isn't a self-help seminar designed to make you feel warm and fuzzy. It is designed as a literal structural audit of the human hardware you currently inhabit. We are here to talk about initiating a primary system reset.
A primary system reset.
Ah,
I love the ambition in that phrasing. And I have to say, right out of the gate, there is this one concept from the author that absolutely stopped me in my tracks.
the biological casualty part?
Yes, that was the hook that pulled me all the way in. There's this argument in the text that most of us are currently operating like a biological casualty.
Which is a brutal way to put it.
Brutal, but kind of true. I mean, it means we have the grand ambitions of a sovereign power, like you want that senior promotion, you want to launch a startup, you want to run a marathon, whatever it is.
But your operational firmware is just completely compromised.
Exactly. And here is the real kicker. We drape our laziness in the camouflage of burnout.
The camouflage of burnout.
Right. We literally decorate ourselves in lies
Yeah.
to justify why we aren't executing on our goals.
It is a striking visual, isn't it? What's fascinating here is the assertion that lasting change doesn't start with some new productivity hack or a fleeting burst of inspiration.
Right. You can't just download a new habit tracking app and expect your entire life trajectory to alter.
Exactly. It has to begin with the practice of radical, unfiltered self-accountability. This methodology describes it as establishing a cold, forensic baseline of truth.
Forensic.
Because if you are lying to yourself about why you are failing, authentic growth can't even initiate.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because radical, unfiltered self-accountability sounds incredibly intense. The premise is that people hide their failures behind what the author calls the aesthetic of circumstance.
The aesthetic of circumstance, yes.
We blame the economy, or our micromanaging boss, our busy schedules, our genetics. We construct this beautiful aesthetic of excuses to explain exactly why we aren't where we want to be.
We do, and honestly, it's a very natural human defense mechanism. The author refers to all of those unique challenges, the disadvantages, and the systemic frictions as your bad hand.
Because we all get dealt a bad hand in one way or another.
Yeah.
Nobody escapes friction.
Nobody. But here's the crucial paradigm shift in this material. Within this framework, you do not view these disadvantages as insurmountable barriers. You don't look at your bad hand as a reason to fold the cards and walk away.
Which is what most people do.
Right. Instead, you are instructed to view those exact hardships as the foundational material for your journey towards structural integrity.
So it's not saying I can't succeed because of X. It's flipping the script entirely to X is the exact terrain I have to navigate to build my resilience.
Precisely.
But how do we actually do that on a practical level? Because knowing you shouldn't make excuses is very different from actually stopping the excuses.
That brings us to Pillar Third, the very first evolution this protocol demands. It's a practice called the accountability mirror, or the vulnerability scan.
The vulnerability scan.
And again, notice the clinical language. It is not a visualization exercise where you imagine a golden light. It is a scan of your internal hardware.
Right.
The premise here is that most people fail because they simply refuse to confront the gap between their current output, what they are actually doing every single day, and their projected potential.
So you are challenged to literally stand before your reflection and perform a raw, unfiltered audit of your shortcomings.
Yeah. Yes, you have to strip away the social masking that we all wear for the outside world and deliver hard truths to yourself with absolute precision.
Hold on, let me jump in here, because this is the exact moment where I started to feel a little friction with the methodology.
How so?
Well, we are told we need thicker skin to optimize, and the advice is to be strategically unkind to ourselves during this raw audit. Isn't that a dangerous line to whack?
It's a delicate balance, yes.
Because how do we differentiate between being strategically unkind for the sake of growth and just, sliding into a toxic clinical self-loathing that actually causes the very burnout we are trying to avoid?
It's an incredibly important distinction, and it's the trap most people fall into when they try this. Toxic self-loathing is emotional and it's vague.
Like just insulting yourself.
Right. It's looking in the mirror and saying, I'm a failure, I'm lazy, I'm worthless. That doesn't give you any actionable data.
Okay, I see.
Strategic unkindness, on the other hand, is entirely objective and goal-oriented. You are acting like an impartial auditor examining a failing business.
Ah, okay, so you are taking the emotion out of it completely.
Precisely. If we connect this to the bigger picture of how humans operate, we naturally want to protect our egos. We want to say, well, I tried my best.
They gave it a good shot.
Exactly. This audit strips that away. You cannot stand in front of that mirror and vaguely tell yourself to try harder. That is useless data.
So what does useful data look like?
Let's say you are a mid-level manager trying to get a director role. The accountability mirror isn't saying, I'm bad at my job. It's looking yourself in the eye and saying, you didn't get the promotion because you avoid public speaking, your delegation skills are terrible, and you spent 3 hours scrolling social media yesterday instead of finishing the quarterly report.
Wow, okay, that is brutal, but I see the difference. It's highly specific.
Extremely specific. You are identifying the exact knowledge gaps in your architecture. And once you acknowledge them brutally, you actively build a learning plan to patch those specific bugs.
It's a relentless confrontation with the reality of your current state until that reality is no longer acceptable.
That's it exactly.
You are basically bullying your own mediocrity out of existence with pure, objective truth. I like that. But once you establish that baseline of truth and you start putting in the work, you inevitably hit a wall. You run into your own limits. What happens then?
This is where the methodology addresses your operational limit. It introduces pillars a second, a fascinating concept, an internal mechanism within every human machine called the governor.
Yes, the governor. This part was wild to me. I immediately thought about the speed limiter on a golf cart.
That's a great comparison.
You press the pedal all the way down, but the cart just stutters and refuses to go past like 15 miles an hour.
That is the perfect analogy. And it's crucial to understand why this internal governor exists in us. Your brain, at its core, is a survival machine.
Right.
It is wired for metabolic efficiency. It is literally programmed by millions of years of evolution to seek the path of least resistance because, historically, expending unnecessary energy meant you might starve.
Right. Our biology hasn't caught up to the modern world where food is everywhere.
Exactly. The governor is a software cap that prioritizes your immediate comfort over your long-term potential. It creates these artificial stopping points to conserve energy.
It's that little voice inside your head that says, okay, that's enough for today. You've worked hard.
Yes. It is the impulse to quit the second your heart rate spikes during a run or the moment a coding problem gets frustrating. It is the overwhelming feeling of reaching your absolute red line.
But the wild thing is, this red line is a complete biological illusion. And this leads us to one of the most famous, really mind-bending concepts in this entire deep dive, the 40% rule.
It's a game changer.
The idea here is that when your mind tells you that you are entirely finished, when the friction feels absolutely insurmountable and you are 100% ready to quit, you have actually only tapped into about 40% of your actual capability.
It's a staggering thought, isn't it? The 40% rule suggests that the remaining 60% of your potential is just sitting there completely dormant.
Locked away.
Locked behind a massive wall of mental fatigue and an ego-driven desire for safety. Your brain is essentially lying to you to keep you comfortable.
I have to admit, I felt very called out by this when I was reading. I definitely felt the governor kick in last weekend when I was assembling a massive piece of IKEA furniture.
Oh, the ultimate test of fortitude.
Right. About 2 hours in, my brain was screaming that I was at my absolute physical and mental limit of reading Swedish instructions. I was ready to throw the Allen wrench through a window. But according to this rule, I was only at 40% capacity.
It's funny, but it's entirely true. And what's vital to note here is that motivation is entirely irrelevant when you hit that wall.
Motivation won't help you build the bookshelf.
Motivation will not rewire the brain. Motivation is a feeling, and feelings fade the second things get difficult. The only thing that unlocks that reserve 60% capacity is the disciplined habit of actively pushing past the point of comfort.
Okay, but how? Because when you are staring down that 40% wall and your brain is genuinely panicking and screaming at you to stop, how do you actually keep going?
This is where the author introduces a great tactical workaround called the micro-focus strategy.
The micro-focus strategy.
When you hit the wall, whether that's extreme project fatigue late at night, or you are in the middle of a high-stakes, stressful negotiation that is falling apart, your mind will frantically seek to concede just to end the suffering.
Just to make it stop.
Yes, you must recognize in that exact moment that this limit is mental, not physical. Your body isn't failing, your brain is panicking.
So you have to shrink your world down.
Exactly. You break the remaining work down into the absolute smallest possible evolutions. Do not look at the entire mountain you still have to climb.
Because looking at the mountain is what causes the panic.
Right. If you look at the mountain, the governor calculates the massive energy required for the whole trip and forces a shutdown. Instead, you focus exclusively on the next centimeter of movement.
Here's where it gets really interesting. You're basically tricking your brain's survival mechanism by zooming in so close that the perceived threat disappears.
That's the mechanism, yes.
Like, if I have to write a 50-page report, and I'm exhausted at page 20, thinking about the remaining 30 pages triggers the governor. But if I just say, I'm going to write one more paragraph, the brain goes, oh, one paragraph. We have enough energy for that. That's fine.
And then you just repeat that process.
Over and over.
Precisely. You bypass the biological alarm system. And it is the sustained effort, specifically pushing through that initial phase of suffering one microscopic step at a time, that physically rewires the brain.
That is how you build what the framework calls an armored mind.
Mastery isn't about giant heroic leaps. It is a byproduct of consistently choosing the harder path on small daily tasks when your brain is begging you to stop.
I love that. Shrink the horizon. But let's be real. There are moments where even the microfocus strategy feels impossible.
Of course.
What about when things get really dark? When you are facing a critical failure, or you are so emotionally and physically depleted that the tank is just bone dry, what do we do then?
That brings us to pillar the third of the methodology, affectionately termed the cookie jar.
Which, I have to clarify for you listening, is not a jar of literal cookies to reward yourself for sending an email. Though that sounds nice.
Unfortunately not. The cookie jar is described as a metadata database of past suffering.
Wait, a metadata database. So basically, it's like keeping a mental photo album of the hardest, most miserable days of your life just to prove to yourself that you didn't die.
That is actually a very accurate way to look at it. You are cataloging every major career success, every significant personal obstacle you have ever overcome, and every deeply complex challenge you have previously mastered.
Okay, but this raises an important question. Why do we do this? Because it sounds kind of depressing to just remember suffering.
This is not for the sake of nostalgia. You aren't reminiscing to boost your ego. It is a tool for tactical recall.
Tactical recall.
Yes, when you are sitting right on the absolute verge of quitting, your system is in crisis. It needs undeniable proof that it can survive the current stress load. So you mentally reach into the database and pull out a cookie from your past.
And the key here is that you don't just remember the event like reading a Wikipedia page. You have to vividly recall the exact emotional state of those victories.
The visceral feeling.
Right. You force yourself to remember the intense, full-body pride you felt when you finally finished that marathon when you thought your legs would give out. Or the specific relief and vindication of finally securing that difficult promotion after months of rejection.
Or the raw struggle of learning a complex coding language from scratch in the exact moment it finally clicked.
Exactly. These memories are reservoirs of power. You are literally pulling stored metadata to fuel your current effort.
You are taking the physical and emotional proof of what your system has already survived, and you are injecting it straight into your active operating system.
It reminds your panicking brain, we have been in the dark before, and we didn't break. We can handle this.
That makes total sense for the emotional side of exhaustion.
But what about the logical side? Because sometimes the doubt isn't just physical fatigue. It's a very rational-sounding voice in your head saying, the math doesn't work. We are going to fail.
That is a brilliant point, and it's exactly why the protocol includes pillar the fourth, a cognitive tool called the what-if logic, or the bypass command.
The bypass command.
In moments of high friction, your brain will naturally calculate the mathematical probabilities of failure. It builds a very convincing, highly rational argument for why a goal is impossible.
Right. If you are launching a product and running out of funding, your brain goes, look at the data, look at the competitors, look at the bank account. The math says we lose. The most logical thing to do is quit right now to save face.
And that probability logic is a killer of innovation. The what-if logic acts as a direct bypass command for that specific algorithm.
How so?
It forcibly shifts your focus away from the probability of failure and redirects it entirely toward the possibility of execution.
It completely silences the arguments for defeat. When the status quo, or your coworkers, or your own brain insists a task cannot be done, you just look the situation dead in the eye and ask, what if?
Yes.
What if I actually pull this off? What if I am the one person who can figure out this impossible bottleneck?
It shorts out the brain's attempt to math its way out of hard work. The author notes that this specific question, what if, is the exact spark required to persevere and ultimately dominate your field.
It changes the internal narrative from this is impossible to how incredible is it going to be when I prove the data wrong.
Exactly.
Okay, I am fully tracking with this. You audit your hardware, you hack the governor, you pull from the cookie jar, and you bypass defeat with what if.
Right.
Let's say you do all of this and it works. You achieve excellence. You reach the mountaintop.
You get the promotion, you build the company.
Right. How do you sustain it? Because honestly, staying on top often feels way harder than getting there.
This brings us to the final and perhaps most demanding section of the structural audit, the Start at Zero protocol.
Start at zero.
The methodology warns of a very specific, highly insidious vulnerability that comes with success. It calls it the disease of satisfaction.
The disease of satisfaction. That is such a chilling phrase. But wait, so you are telling me I can't even celebrate a win? I put in all this grueling work, bypass my biological limits, and I don't even get to chill and enjoy my success for a minute.
It sounds harsh, but the reality is that satisfaction leads directly to systemic decay. To maintain the armored mind you've built, you cannot rest on your laurels.
You can't just coast.
Never. The standard set here is that you must strive to be uncommon amongst uncommon, meaning even after you have reached an elite level, even when you are surrounded by other high performers, you have to continue pushing the boundary.
And the way you do that is by viewing all of your past achievements as dead data.
Dead data, exactly.
It doesn't matter what record you broke yesterday or the sales numbers you hit last month or the awards you won last year. That data is dead. Today is zero.
Every single day is a brand new opportunity and a strict requirement to prove your capability all over again, entirely regardless of yesterday's results.
This start at zero mindset ensures your pursuit of improvement is perpetual. Because the moment you think you've made it, your hardware begins to degrade.
The governor creeps back in.
Right, you start seeking comfort, and before you know it, you are obsolete.
Exactly.
But if you are always starting at zero and you are constantly pushing your red line to stay uncommon, you are going to fail. A lot. Failure is inevitable if you are pushing that hard every single day.
Absolutely. But this framework has a very refreshing, highly clinical take on failure. It argues that failure is never a source of shame. Never.
Which is huge because we are so conditioned to fear it.
We are. But instead, failure is simply a source of priceless first-hand data. In fact, if you are not failing regularly, you are simply not testing the red line. You are operating too safely within your comfort zone.
So failure isn't the end of the story. It's just a diagnostic tool.
Precisely. And when a setback does occur, there is a very specific reaction protocol you must follow, the live autopsy or the after-action report.
A live autopsy. Walk me through what that actually looks like. Let's say I just gave a massive pitch to a client and I completely bombed it. They hated it. They walked out. How do I do a live autopsy without just spiraling into despair?
First, you must completely detach your emotion. You cannot wallow in pity and you cannot get defensive and blame the client.
That's the hard part.
It is, but you step back and act like a forensic scientist. You document every single tactical misstep you made with clinical precision.
Sure.
You realize, okay, I didn't research their recent quarterly losses, I spoke too quickly during the Q&A, and my slide deck was too dense.
So looking at the actual mechanics of what went wrong.
Right. Then you analyze the mindset flaws. You say, I let my ego tell me I didn't need to practice the night before. Finally, you develop a brand new strategy based exclusively on this forensic data.
And then, and I think this is the absolute most crucial part of the live autopsy,
Right.
you must immediately schedule the next attempt.
Yes. immediately.
You don't sit around for 3 weeks nursing your wounded pride. You don't have an endless whiteboard session about ideation. The audit is complete. You pick up the phone and you pitch the next client.
That immediacy is key.
Yeah.
Delay allows the governor to reboot.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
If you wait, your brain starts feeding you the probabilities of a second failure. Immediate action uses the fresh, priceless data while keeping the system's momentum moving forward.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now?
Yeah.
If we synthesize this entire deep dive, the biggest takeaway is that true fortitude isn't a burst of fleeting inspiration.
Not at all.
It isn't a motivational quote you stick on your monitor. It is a daily, relentless, almost forensic confrontation with your current state over and over again until that reality is no longer acceptable.
I would strongly encourage you to execute your first evolution today. Take these technical frameworks we've discussed. Think about your own day right now.
Start with the accountability mirror.
Yes, look at the one thing you are avoiding and perform that vulnerability scan without excuses. When you feel the urge to quit your workout or your project today, recognize the governor is lying to you and apply the 40% rule using microfocus.
You do 1 more centimeter.
And if you stumble, run a live autopsy, detach your emotions, and try again immediately.
And as you go about your day, getting ready to run that first evolution, I want to leave you with one final thought to really mull over. Think about this. If your brain is literally hardwired to lie to you about your physical and mental limits just to conserve energy, creating the illusion of absolute insurmountable exhaustion when you are sitting at just 40% capacity, what other fundamental truths about your personality, your anxieties, or your perceived weaknesses are actually just evolutionary software bugs waiting for you to write the patch?